There's a saying among backpackers, be comfortable during the day or be comfortable at night. And there's a lot of truth to that. The lighter the load that you carry during the day often means a trade-off of being less comfortable sleeping, hanging around the campfire, and having a little bit more boring dinner at night. But not always. So today we're going to look at ways to go ultralight when you go backpacking. Welcome to the Adventure Travel Show podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. Before we get started, I want to ask you a favor. I would very much appreciate it if you could show me a little love and please leave a hopefully 5-star rating and review, A, so that I know what you think about the program, and B, because it helps boost my presence in the podcast world so that others like yourselves can find the show. And of course, you can always reach me at kit@activetraveladventures.com. I love getting your emails. So now let's get the scoop on ultralight backpacking. Since there aren't any stores in the backcountry, people tend to carry way more things than they actually need because they're worried about, oh, what if I need it? So they throw it in the pack. And all that just in case weight can sure add up. Early backpackers simply used what they had available, like the famous Grandma Gatewood, the older woman who thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail in her Keds, which are on display at the Outfitters in Damascus, Virginia, along the trail. And she just threw a duffel bag over her shoulder. But as backpacking became more and more popular, the manufacturers rushed to give us all the gear that we could possibly need for our comfort. And over time, we started filling those packs with all these modern conveniences. But all that adds weight. When my girlfriend Mary Ann backpacked in Europe back in this is going to probably be in the 70s, her pack weighed about 70 pounds and she's super tiny. I'm surprised her knees didn't blow out. I find it amusing that the very first trail town that you come to when you're through hiking northbound on the Appalachian Trail is filled with the belongings of through hikers that thought, oh, I better bring this just in case I need it. And then after a couple of days carrying all that excess weight, by the time they got to town, they were really happy to chuck it. Just like cats in a walk in the wood. Remember Bill Bryson's sidekick who famously answered when Bill said, Where's the dinner? Where's the kitchen? I chucked it. Cats had chucked like the whole kitchen and all their food stuff. We're just going to go cold food from now on because the weight was just driving him crazy. And while I understand cats' need to get rid of the weight, obviously you don't want to be chucking your gear in the woods or anything like that. But when you're out there backpacking and just everything, your shoulders and your back are just killing you with all that weight, that's when you start thinking, man, did I really need all that junk? And is there ways that I can reduce that pack weight so I'm a little bit more comfortable while I'm out there hiking? The safe weight for backpacking is around 20% of your body weight. So for me, that works out to about 30 pounds. Total weight, that's with my gear, my pack, food and water, everything that is on my back. At the max, I should be carrying about 30 pounds. And of course, you train to get up to that, and you can go to the backpack training episode to learn how to do that. I'll put links to that in the show notes. But there's people out there that carry a lot less, and these are the ultralight backpackers. My hiking buddy John has a base pack weight of just 10 pounds. John's pretty hardcore. I can't personally go that hardcore because I like a little bit more comfort at night, but there are lots of options to reduce your weight, and you can pick and choose amongst the different options so that you kind of fine-tune the best combination for you and where your priorities are for comfort during the day versus comfort at night. So let's back up a minute. I mentioned John had a base weight of 10 pounds. So what do I mean by that? Your base weight is your pack plus everything that's in it that's non-consumable. So everything but your food and your drink. And when you add up that and we're adding ounces, we're getting that fine-tuned that we're going to check all the ounces of the things that we're carrying. And when you add all those up, that's your base weight. And while I'm going to recommend that you write down each item that you're carrying and you individually weigh it, we're going to get into that a little bit later. If you just need a rough idea for training and all that, of how do you figure out how much weight your pack carries, just step on the scale, weigh yourself without your pack, and then put your fully loaded pack back on. And this could have your food and your water so that you know exactly what all that kind of weighs. Step back on the scale and then just do a simple subtraction, because just putting the pack on the scale is sometimes clunky and sometimes it doesn't fit. It wants to roll off. But so that's the way I check my pack weight as I'm training and as I'm building up my weights. So before we drill down deep into ultralight options, I want to make sure you're real clear on how we're calculating the weight on our back, because this is really important because you don't want to get hurt. So for an example, let's pretend like I'm going to go on a 4-day backpacking trip. So like I said, I'm not hardcore like John. My base weight is 18 pounds compared to his 10 pounds. But if I'm trying to figure out what do I need for this trip, or what kind of weight am I going to be carrying for this trip, let's look at the math on that. The food you'll need per day averages 1.5 to 2 pounds per day. So assuming that I'm going to have breakfast before I head out, and when I return home, I'm going to have dinner wherever it is that the trailhead is, I'm going to need, for my 4-day backpacking trip, 4 lunches, 3 breakfasts, and 3 dinners. That's going to work out to 5 to 7 pounds of food. Add that to my base weight of 18 pounds. Now I'm at 25 pounds. So that leaves me 5 pounds of play for my water. And like I said, I'll often carry more than that if that's what I need to do. And a lot of places actually where I hike, water is readily accessible and I can treat it so that I just have to carry a little bit of water just to get me to the next stream or spring or whatever it is. And I'll also put a link to the water purification episode as well, so you can learn how to do that as well, so you don't have to carry all your water if water is readily available in the wild. So we want to try to stick to that 20% of our body weight. And so that's fine when I'm hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains where there's plenty of water. But let's say I'm going to do a high desert mountain hike where water is not readily available. Then I've got a problem. I'm going to have to reduce that pack weight from my 18 pounds and get a little bit closer to John's. So let's look now at the different ways that we can do that and how we can go ultralight. Whether you need to go ultralight for a particular adventure that you want to go on, or just if you want to have a little bit more comfort during the day and just not carry so much weight in your back. You might have back problems, who knows? But let's find out what our options are so that you can cherry pick amongst the different components and choose the one that's the best mix of comfort trading off against weight for you and your situation. You might find it helpful to see what the most you can reduce your pack weight is, and then once you have that written down, or these are the things I can make improvements here, 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 and here, and here, and also put the cost, because it does cost more than $100 per pound that you want to shave, and the technology is there. If you've got the money, there's lots of ways you can reduce that pack weight and still maintain some semblance of comfort if you're willing to spend. If you can afford to, you can buy your way to ultralight and still have more comfort than a lot of people, because there's some really, really high-tech, expensive stuff out there that will give you the best of both worlds, but it's going to cost you. So remember, for most of us, we got to trade that comfort and weight and also consider the cost. The easiest and cheapest way to reduce your pack weight is just to bring less stuff. I'm always shocked at some of the things I see backpackers carrying, needlessly, in my opinion. There is nothing in my backpack except for emergency gear that I don't use every day, except for I have one luxury item, which I think is good to have at least one thing that's like a little treat. So I tailor my list to whatever trip that I'm taking with the goal of bringing only that which I truly actually need. Most of the times, if you didn't bring it, you can make do with whatever it is that you've got. That's a really easy trade-off, is just to stop carrying all the stuff people carry. And so my luxury item is a really small 9-inch down pillow that weighs practically nothing. I'm going to include my backpacking checklist spreadsheet in next month's newsletter, so be sure you're on my email list so that you get that. I find it really helpful. You can add and subtract according to your needs, but it's pretty fine-tuned, and I literally use everything in that pack every day, and I don't feel like I'm really missing any grand thing when I go on my adventures. And particularly if you're new to backpacking and you're going to be getting gear for the first time, definitely use my checklist, because when you go in that store, oh, you got to get this, you got to get this, you don't need to get all that stuff. When you go into an outfitter today, you can be overwhelmed with all the gear. They say, oh, this is great for backpacking. You don't need all that gear. So please use my checklist and fine tune it according to your needs, and don't get carried away by all these great bells and whistles and newfangled new things they have in the store. Save your back and your money. And also, I just want to put in a disclaimer. My checklist is for 3-season backpacking. I do not do the cold. So I get down to maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. So let's figure out, how do we even know what the things weigh? If you're buying something new, of course, that's listed in the spec sheets and the specifications of the product. But if not, get a small kitchen scale. I have this one that looks like a little spaceship that is a baking scale. It wasn't very expensive, as I recall. And I individually weigh each item on the kitchen scale, and I record it in grams. It just makes it easier to add everything up instead of the ounces and pounds and all that. So I'll have on my spreadsheet the grams, and then later I'll convert it back to pounds and ounces, which means something to my head since I don't have metric in my head. And before I go on any trip, I take a look at this spreadsheet that I print out, and then I think, on this particular trip, do I need this? Do I need this? Do I need this? And that way, I don't forget anything essential, but I really try to quiz myself. Do I really need it? The further away I am, the bigger I beef up my emergency kit. So, for example, my upcoming El Camino in Portugal, I'm going to be in civilization for the most part, so I can really pare down my emergency kit to just basic first aid in case I hurt myself, trip, or something like that. But if instead I'm 20 miles from civilization, out in the middle of nowhere with very little traffic on the trail, I'm going to make sure I have a fully stocked emergency kit. And I did an episode number 2 on emergency kits. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, so you can review that list prior to any adventure to make sure you bring just what you need. So getting back to the general checklist, look at each item individually to see, what can I leave behind? What can I leave behind? That's the question you want to ask. Not, what if I need it? It's, what can I do without? What can I leave behind? With those questions in mind, let's look at my Portuguese El Camino. About 150 miles, but I'm going to be going in civilization for the most part. I'm not going to be camping, and so I don't need to bring a tent. I am going to buy food along the way, so I'm not even going to have to carry a whole bunch of my food. I don't need to bring my kitchen. I don't have to cook anything. It'd be nice to make tea, but I'm just not going to carry the weight. I'll just stop in a little cafe when I get to a village and have a tea. The only thing I'm going to need to bring for a bedroom is my sleeping bag if I want to stay in one of the pilgrimage hostels. So no tent, no stove. I'm just going to need my clothes. I'm going to need a very pared down emergency kit and my daily lunch, snacks, and water. Unfortunately, I'm also going to have a little bit of business attire because I'm going to a conference before then, and so I will have one nice outfit outside of my hiking gear in there, but then that's going to add a couple more pounds to my pack weight. So like I said, outside of my down pillow, which I will not bring on this trip because there should be pillows, I assume, wherever I stay. Everything that's in that pack is going to be something I actually need for me to do my walk. So sure, that's all well and good. I don't need to bring some of this heavy stuff on this particular trip, but let's say I was planning on doing a high desert mountain backpacking trip where I'm going to need to carry a lot of water, and therefore I'm going to have to reduce my base pack weight. I'm not going to be able to get away with my 18 pounds. So of course, we don't want to bring anything we don't need, but I do need my tent. I do need my kitchen. I'm going to have to bring all the gear, except the gear is heavy. So here's where we're going to go drilling down to the different components of where we can save money and go ultralight in our base weight on our backpack. So if my base pack weight currently is 18 pounds and I want to go ultralight, I want to get closer to John's 10 pounds. Where do I go? What do I do? The first place to look is at the big 4. These are the big bulky items that you need in order to backpack. This is your backpack itself, your shelter, and your bedding, your sleeping bag and pad. So let's go one by one through these items. And let's start with the backpack. Remember, we're only going to be carrying what we need, so if you carry less, you may be able to get away with a smaller pack. Smaller packs mean you're going to have less weight. You can also take advantage of the new lightweight materials that are more costly, but they can give you that same strength without the weight. Your backpack is one of your most crucial purchases. So to me, this is not an area to skimp. But nothing says you have to pay full price, right? Almost everything comes on sale at least once during the year. So maybe you can pick it up for 20 to 30% or more off. You can get more details on choosing and fitting your backpack in episode number 4, because remember, your pack's got to fit right or you're going to be really uncomfortable. So you want to make sure you're sized properly for it, as well as packing it right, but you want to make sure you're getting the right pack for your needs. And don't forget, you can always rent a pack until you can afford the one that you want. Ultralight backpacks might be frameless with minimal padding and hold just 45 to 55 liters and usually weigh under 2 pounds, whereas mine is just under 4 pounds. Unlike the Ultralight, I've got thick padding on the shoulders, I've got great ventilation in the back, and it also holds a lot more as well. But that's my trade-off. For my high desert adventure, I might have to go down to the Ultralight backpack and sacrifice a little bit of that comfort in order to shave almost 2 pounds. So let's say I've gone with the Ultralight backpack. I've gone from 18 pounds down to 16.25 pounds. I'm making some progress getting towards John's base weight. So now let's look at another heavy and bulky item. One big way to reduce your base pack weight is to reduce the weight of your bedroom. If you'll check out episode number 11, you'll see our discussion of the pros and cons of tent versus tarps and bivy sacks and all that. But whichever camping shelter you choose, you have options in materials and in size that can lighten your load. My tent is a really nice Big Agnes 1.5 person tent, but I could go down to a 1-person ultralight tent that uses my trekking poles as a support and get my weight down significantly. Ultralight tents also use one material for both walls, and the walls is the rainfly and the tent body. Whereas many traditional tents will use a mesh for the tent wall so that on clear nights you can sleep under the stars, but then you've got to cover with a rainfly for inclement weather. A traditional tent normally weighs around 2.5 pounds per person. Like I said, so I have a 1.5 person tent because I like a little bit extra room and I like to put my gear in there and all that. But for my high desert adventure, I might need to scale that back to a 1-person ultralight tent. You can also lower your shelter weight by choosing a 3-season tent instead of a 4-season tent if you're not camping in the winter like me. So I was able to get away with that a little bit to shave a little bit of the weight off of that because it's going to be a really rare case if I'm out camping and all of a sudden it gets below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Another way you can shave some weight is to consider coughing up some money for the titanium stakes instead of aluminum. Here you're, like most of these things, you're trading dollars for weight. And here's a tip to make sure you don't accidentally leave behind your fancy titanium stakes, is I go to any hardware store and get a roll of that cheap surveyor's tape in neon. Mine's neon orange. And I tear off a strip of that and I tie a knot around the hook of the shepherd's hook of the titanium stakes. That way it does 2 things. When I'm breaking camp, A, I'm not going to miss it because I'll see the neon orange. And B, it also alerts people to the guy lines so nobody accidentally trips. The surveyor tape weighs nothing, and I actually even keep a little bit of that in my emergency kit in case I need to alert people to a hazard, which I've actually used several times. Like once there's this skinny bridge over a stream that you kind of shimmied over on your fanny, and there was a protruding nail that could have really ripped the inside of your thigh. So I wanted to flag that so nobody would accidentally hurt themselves. And there's another time when I was hiking with Jerry and Jane where the turn in the trail was hard to see. So I put a piece of the neon tape on a leaf. So when they saw it, they'd say, oh, Kit's trying to tell us something, so we better pay attention. You can also use trees and native rocks to secure your tent, but I don't like to assume I'm going to find natural materials right where I want to set up camp. So I do bring my titanium stakes. Instead of a tent, you could also consider a tarp, a hammock, or even a bivy sack because these can weigh considerably less than a tent. So consider all your options when you're trying to reduce your weight. Again, I'm going to refer you back to episode 11 for a complete discussion of all the pros and cons of each of these bedrooms for you so you can choose the proper shelter for your adventure. Okay, so for my high desert mountain adventure, let's say I go from my 2-person Big Agnes tent down to a 1-person ultralight tent. I have now shaved 1 pound 3 ounces on tent weight. And then on my stakes, I go from aluminum hooks, of which I bring 8, down to titanium. I'm going from 4 ounces down to 1 3/4 ounces, so I save another 2 1/4 ounces. So I've shaved another 1.5 pounds off my base weight from 16 1/4 pounds down 1.5 pounds, leaves me at 14.75. John, I'm closing in on you. So where else can we save on our pack weight? Let's head next to our sleeping situation. We'll first start with our sleeping bag. One way to save a lot of weight on your bedroom is to use a down sleeping bag. Down fill is much lighter and compresses much more than synthetic fill, so you'll also have a little bit more room in your pack too if you go with down. You want to make sure, though, that the sleeping bag that you choose has down that has been treated to be water resistant because once down gets wet, it takes forever to dry. You can buy a quality down sleeping bag for less than 2 pounds. If, like me, you avoid the cold at all costs, you could buy a sleeping bag that's rated for only the lowest temperature that you think you need. Don't go get a 4-season sleeping bag if you're like me and you don't go out when it's going to be cold. So I use a 3-season sleeping bag. It's good down to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And they, like I said, they make sleeping bags that go well below 0. But if you're not doing that kind of adventure, you don't need to pay A, the extra amount that it's going to cost to get one that's that insulated, and B, it's going to weigh a lot more because it's got to have that insulation. So the more warmth that you're asking for, the more it's going to weigh. So just buy what you need. Ask yourself too, do you need that hood on the sleeping bag? Why not skip it? Use your balaclava or your wool hat instead. You can also bring the weight down further by considering a quilt because they can often weigh less than a sleeping bag. So if I go from a synthetic sleeping bag that's rated for 30 degrees or warmer to a lightweight down sleeping bag that is rated for 40 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer because I don't go where it's cold, I can go from 2 pounds 9 ounces down to 1 pound 3 ounces, saving 1 pound 6 ounces. So in our base weight calculation, dropping that extra 1.5 pounds on the sleeping bag, I'm going from 14.75 down to 13.25 pounds. But the sleeping bag isn't the only place in the sleeping area that you can save weight. One thing that's really heavy can be that sleeping pad. When I first read Ray Jardine's book about ultralight backpacking, I became an instant fan. I made much of my earlier gear according to his methods. Some of it I still use, but others I don't because I wanted to trade comfort at night in exchange for carrying a little bit more weight during the day. But I did cough up for a lightweight mattress pad. In Ray's book, he recommends buying this foam and then measuring your torso, cutting the pads just to give you some nominal comfort from your butt to your head. And that just simply wasn't comfortable enough for me. Instead, I used one of those blow-up sleeping pads that, I believe in a nod to Ray, does taper at the feet because it doesn't have any excess padding where your body's not. You can now buy an insulating blow-up sleeping pad for less than £1 that rolls up into something about the size of a water bottle. But in addition to comfort, you got to also pay attention to how much insulation you're going to need that pad to be. Like for me, the 3-season hiker, there's no need for me to buy a 4-season pad. The sleeping pads are going to have an R value, or an insulation value, that tells you its insulating qualities. And it's going to be rated for 1 for like really warm season to over 5.5 for hardcore winter usage. And pay attention to size too. You want to buy the shortest pad that fits your body, and you can shave a little bit of weight there. This is one place where the shorter people get an advantage. And sometimes I like to elevate my feet at night on my backpack. If you're like that, then maybe you can get away with a torso-only pad. Going from a 2 pound 6 ounce self-inflating sleeping pad to one of the ultralight blow-up sleeping pads can save you a lot of weight in your backpack. If the self-inflating is at 2 pounds 6 ounces and you can reduce that down to 12 ounces, you're saving almost another 1.5 pounds, bringing our pack weight down to 11.75 pounds. And now let's go into that big category of the rest of your junk. And here's where you can make that dramatic impact on your pack weight. And again, like I said before, just pack less stuff. Use the checklist and only bring the stuff you truly need. When buying clothing and such, you're going to find that choosing high-tech synthetic fabric, the performance materials, are going to weigh less than traditional fabrics. Cotton is heavy. It takes forever to dry. I don't recommend bringing cotton, anything outside of a bandana. Instead, choose that synthetic clothing that's going to wick away your moisture and it dries quickly. You're going to find it weighs a whole lot less. And for your gear, use the modern synthetic materials like ripstop for your tents. Don't even think about something like those old canvas tents that the Boy Scouts used to use. Modern technology has brought us some fabulous materials that are lightweight and durable. Lean towards the lightweight metals like titanium, even over aluminum, which is lightweight in and of itself, and both of those are a heck of a lot better than steel. Downfill is often lighter weight than synthetic fill, but some of the Permalofts are getting pretty good, so be sure, just compare. When you go particularly to the online sites, they're going to list the weight. Write it down. Really do some comparison shopping on weight as well as the features and the quality. Before you buy anything, you really want to compare the actual ounces. Yes, ounces, not pounds. You want to get that specific on whatever gear that you're considering. Weigh the gear that you already have and make up your own spreadsheet. And then spend some time looking at your list. See where you can find the biggest weight reductions for the least aggravation and loss of comfort. Then come up with a plan to slowly acquire replacement gear and try to buy it when it's on sale. Compare your spreadsheet to my spreadsheet. What are you packing that I'm not? Ask yourself, really, do you need that item? When you've gone out before, have you actually used the item? Or if you did use it, did it really enhance your trip that you had it? Like I said, I'm not hardcore ultralight. I consider myself medium core, and I purposely trade comfort during the day for comfort at camp. So whatever you do, make sure that your packing is aligning with your needs, your comfort desires, and is your best mix for day comfort versus night comfort. So if you want to be more hardcore, ask yourself, what items can I downsize or even do without altogether? Try renting some of the gear that you're thinking about because it can be pretty expensive, and then make sure that it works for you. Like I said, I tried Ray Jardine's little half torso pad. I didn't like it. It didn't work for me at all. But it was a minor expense. On the really expensive stuff, you may want to consider borrowing or renting some of that gear to make sure you're really happy with it before you actually buy it. I used to use my stuff sack filled with clothes as my pillow until I switched for the down pillow. If I was doing that high desert mountain, I needed to shave the weight, the pillow's not making that trip. I'd be back to my stuff sack pillow. Don't bring as many clothes. Wash them more often or wear them dirty. That's pretty much what I do. When I go backpacking, I have the shirt on my back, one backup shirt in my backpack, and only the hiking pants that I'm wearing. I pack some lightweight running shorts. That's what I do laundry in. And that's it. I don't care how long the trip is. I only pack 2 underwear, the one I'm wearing and the one I'm going to wear tonight when I'm washing the one I'm wearing. 2 pairs of socks, one that's always dry that I wear at night and the one that I'm wearing that I'll wash and dry. So I really recommend that you study my checklist and compare with what you're ordinarily bringing to see, could you eliminate some of the stuff that you're packing? Do you really need that camp chair, or would leaning against a tree work just fine? Every little bit of pack weight reduction helps, and it all adds up. Here are some other easy tips to try. You can cut your toothbrush in half and just bring the bristled half. Some people go so far as to drill holes in that half. That seems a little extreme, but those that are trying to shave every fraction of an ounce, that's what they do. I buy a package of baby wipes, and then I'll open it up and I'll let that air out for a couple of months till all the moisture is gone. And then that way I've got some baby wipes that I can bring without the water weight. I can reactivate by adding water once I'm at the campsite, but I'm not carrying that water that's built into those baby wipes. Remember, water is really heavy and it adds up. Then I'll actually count how many baby wipes I'm bringing. I'll bring 1 baby wipe per day. And that's what I use to take my bath. Whenever possible, try to use multi-use and multi-purpose items. I use a plastic spork as both my fork and my spoon. My bandana can screen debris from water before I filter it. It can even filter coffee. It can be my head cover, an emergency tourniquet, offer me a little shade when I'm taking a nap, act as a rag, a washcloth, or when rolled up and tied around my wrist is my sweat rag. That's how I use it daily. My coffee and tea mug is the same thing as my bowl, which also doubles as my plate. Cut out the stuff. If you're hiking with others, share the gear. Do you really, all of you, need to bring a kitchen? Can you share a tent? Reduce the excess equipment and split up the weight amongst you. You can also remove any parts of the gear that you're not using. And while I don't recommend it, if you don't use the sternum strap, just cut it off. Trim off any excess adjustment straps like on your hip belt. But make sure before you do any cutting of things and manipulation of your backpack, put on all your bulky clothes before you cut it. You don't want to accidentally cut off something that you're going to actually use. And if you cut those straps, you want to prevent fraying. So take a lighter and then put a little flame to those edges. That'll melt those edges and keep them from fraying on you. I want you to examine every single item you're taking. Is it possible to bring that item in a smaller or lighter weight variety, in a smaller container? You don't need to bring that full bottle of sunscreen. Pack a travel size. You want to use the sample sizes of things like toothpaste when available. And even those little toothpaste, I found you can refill them. Just butt up a regular toothpaste container to the small one with no air, and you can refill those little ones. So if you're in between dentist visits and you don't have them, go ahead and just keep the one you have and just fill it back up. I still feel bad that I didn't inspect my sister Terry's backpack when we climbed Chiripo in Costa Rica. That was her first big overnight hike, and it was 12 miles with 7,000 foot elevation gain. It truly was like straight up. Talk about brutal. We slept at a base camp that night, and when we got ready for bed, I saw that Terry had packed full-size face and body lotions and sunscreens. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think to check her pack. And when you think about it, what is all that lotion? Fancy water. What is water? Heavy. So look at all the things you're bringing. Is there a way to reduce the size of the container? Is there a way to bring less? Do you even need it? For your kitchen, look at different stove options and consider the weight of the fuel it requires. I personally like my little teeny fold-up stove that uses fuel cubes. I count how many meals I need to cook, and then I'll throw in a couple more just so I can make tea during non-meal time. If you use canister fuel, weigh them so you only bring the one with the amount of fuel that you need. Save fuel by rehydrating meals up to 2 hours before cooking them, and that'll help speed things up so you don't use as much fuel. You want to bring dehydrated foods that you add that heavy water to once you're at camp. And only bring slightly more food than you think you'll need. I remember backpacking with Jerry, and her back was just killing her. We were at an Appalachian Trail lean-to, and we were taking a lunch break. And when she was pulling out things in her pack, I saw how much food she has. Like, Jerry, she couldn't possibly eat all that food between now and the next trail town where we could resupply. So I said, what we need is a hungry thru hiker. And lo and behold, the good Lord answered us, and within seconds comes this hungry thru hiker. After feeding him, which of course he was thrilled, it was A, he got more food, and B, he had different food than what he'd been eating for the last month or so. And then we loaded him up with all of Jerry's excess. But we can't count on finding a hungry thru hiker, so just don't bring too much food. When I'm backpacking, I find the initial week, I'm not as hungry as I am. I start getting ravenous and really burning through the calories in the second week, but that first week, it's still pretty normal. My metabolism is not all revved up yet. So when I mentioned earlier about the 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds, in that first week, 1.5 pounds a day was fine. But by week 2, I needed that 2 pounds a day because I was just plowing through those calories. So when you're backpacking, pay attention. How much do you actually need? What does your body do? I know mine, like I said, it seems to be fine that first week until I get ravenous that second week. But week 1, I'm normal. You want the lightest weight calories possible. And a lot of that, unfortunately, is often not good for you food, but it is calories. I refer you back to the nutrition episode as well, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And when packing food, think instant foods like instant mashed potatoes or oatmeal. And repackage the foods that you do buy into lighter weight zip bags. Sometimes they come in these big, heavy bags. If you're not going to be cooking in them, maybe you can put it into a lighter zip bag before you go. And look at every single piece of gear you're bringing, including things like stuff sacks. Is there a lighter weight yet durable alternative for you? Gear is improving every year. If you've had something for a while, see if technology hasn't improved since your last purchase. And also, there's a lot of gearheads that they have to buy the latest and the greatest each year. You can buy used a lot of stuff that's an improvement on what you have, but getting it at a fraction of the retail price because you're buying it a year or two later. But it's still a step up for you. Another item, toilet paper. Instead of bringing the bulk of a full roll, just estimate how much you're going to need. I tear off multiple 3 squares of some quality toilet paper and fold them and keep them in a small zip bag. And then I'll use a larger zip bag, clearly labeled trash, so I carry out any used toilet paper and trash and all that, and I'll dump that out at every trail town. In most cases, you can forget about packing a toilet trowel. I just use a stick and dig my cat hole. Consider using compression sacks instead of regular stuffed sacks. That may allow you to carry a smaller pack, and that smaller pack means less weight. You definitely want to use compression sacks for your sleeping bag and your clothes. Before you head out each day, tank up on water, so that way you're starting fully hydrated. You may not need to drink as much of that heavy water as you're hiking along. Consider bringing a collapsible water bottle instead of a standard plastic bottle. I personally like my bladder, plus I always keep one full water bottle so that if I drink up everything that I've allocated in my bladder or what I think I'm going to need, I know that I still have that reserve bottle that I can ration out until I get to my next water stop. You want to buy the smallest backpack you think you can get away with so you avoid the temptation to overpack. But don't get so ambitious that you don't allow yourself any luxuries. For me, like I said, it's my tiny little down pillow. For you, it could be a paperback. If you're bringing a paperback to read, consider burning the pages you've read each night in the evening's campfire, and that'll help reduce your weight as you go along on your hike. If you're planning on doing a through hike with mailed resupply, how about cutting up your book into sections and add a section to each box? Normally, I consider defacing a book sacrilege. However, there may be times that this might be a great option for you. Finally, this is super important. Get organized. That way you're not in a rush to pack. When you rush, you tend to overpack, and you bring a lot of these just in case you need it junk because you didn't have a chance to focus and really decide what it is you really needed. So make up your own spreadsheet, Use that as a packing guideline and a reference for future trips. Keep your gear all together and keep it organized, and that'll help for easy packing. And when you get home, review what you packed and pay special attention to anything you didn't use. Can you remove it from your spreadsheet? Make a note on it. See, is that something that can go? Pay attention to your history. And then if you see after a couple trips you're just not using it, get rid of it. Keep your spreadsheet current. That way you can keep fine-tuning your gear and you can minimize your pack weight. Using our examples earlier, we were able to reduce the backpack, the sleeping pad, the sleeping bag, and the tent from a base weight of 18 pounds down to 11 3/4, a savings of more than a third of the base pack weight. And if we go through all the other items in our pack, we could probably shave another pound or two off of that, getting really super close to John's 10-pound base pack weight. You can do it as well and become an ultralight backpacker. I hope you found today's show on how to reduce your pack weight helpful. And remember, please take a moment to do a rating and review. I would certainly appreciate it. And as always, you can reach out to me at any time at kit@activetraveladventures.com. I always enjoy hearing from you. Until next time, thanks for listening. This is Kit Parks. Adventure on!